medium-sized financial institutions. Please help me welcome Dr. Streff.
Thanks. Is this on? Everybody hear me okay? Okay. Lots of DSU graduates I see in this room. So, Nick, you're 7 years you spent there to get your bachelor's degree. Good to see you. We built buildings in his honor, not named them, but, thanks for financing those. Cody, you too. Thanks for the invitation to come here today. I'm going to be talking about the management side of this. I'm not going to be talking bits and bytes. I'm not going to be talking technologies. This is a management problem too, as most of us know, but what do we do about this? So let's talk a little bit about that. So I'm going to kick this off as everybody's seen slides like this before, right? Security is a people, process, and technology thing, this layered security thing. And undoubtedly, it's important that we have that. Whether it's a secure email system that does encryption over this kind of that, or whatever the technologies are, the reality is the problems are those users, those people between the keyboard and the chair right there. They're the problems, right? They're part of the problems. Right? We do lots of phishing scams, have yet to meet a bank yet that doesn't fail, that somebody doesn't click on something. Just by way of background, SPS, my business, I'm the primary owner of that business, run about 1,000 of the 6,000 banks across the banking system. So that's really our perspective, and we consult with them on the advising side. We equip them with tools to do things themselves, and then we come in and do audits and pen tests and those things to test and verify. We've got another business, Helix Security, that buzzes there to you wave, and that does the same kind of stuff outside of the financial services sector. So our perspective is in coming on with a customer, understanding their risks and threats, and putting in management programs, management systems to be able to mitigate those threats. Okay? We do a lot of work in the risk assessment space. Right? And there's all kinds of assessments that are necessary in a bank. They've got an ACH assessment, identity theft red flags assessment, they've got a BSA program. I mean, they just, for those of you that work in financial services, you know what I'm talking about. All right? But it's about this layered approach and making investments in the appropriate areas. All right. So let's talk about some of the big things that are going out there right now. Right? I think one of the things that executives, one of the things that you want to constantly be doing is teaching your executives, teaching your management team or your board of directors, what are the top 5 threats that are going on at any point in time? They'll never understand more than that. If you're going to talk clickjacking and you're going to talk all these other things, they're not going to get it. But you need to constantly be pounding. What are those big things that are going on? So let's talk about what we see in the financial sector as the big 5. In the banking sector, ATM fraud right now is running rampant. There's lots of different scams out there to hijack ATMs, to cash them out, or to steal stuff. I mean, the ATM environment is a fun playground. I left that one out of here because I know this isn't just bankers here. But these are the top 5 kinds of things. For those of you in the healthcare space, you need to do your own risk assessment, right? You need to conduct your risk assessment now, right? These are the kinds of threats that should be top of order in your risk assessment, right? So let's go through them real quick. The first one is hacking, as we know. Here's some sites for you. And I think the things that are interesting here, you can certainly go ahead and click on this stuff, but for those of you that aren't familiar, the hackers are more organized than you are. Matter of fact, every default password for every piece of equipment for the last 10 years is out there on a website. Right? So if they can sniff your network, figure out what you've got, they don't have to try to break in, they simply try to log in. Right? That's what this is. And there's all kinds of tools here. That's this. This is a website, and again, if anybody wants my slides, they can go out and take a look at these sites. This is an underground market, an e-commerce site to be able to go sell credit cards, or healthcare data, or anything else. There was a recent article that said healthcare data is under more attack now than financial data. $50 a record, right? The Blue Cross Blue Shield recent breach, is really going to highlight this problem, isn't it? And what are folks trying to do on the healthcare side? They're not trying to steal data and sell it. They're trying to submit false claims. They're trying to get medical services that they're not entitled to. Right? So $50 is nothing if I can get medical services that I'm not entitled to. Right? So this is something that you can show your management team, show your board of directors, show folks just how easy it is to sell this stuff. This is an e-commerce site that if I want to go buy, some Capital debit cards, some whatever chemical bank credit cards, add 100 of those, 200 of those, 300 of those, add it to my cart, check out, and now I've got $600. Super easy. And if we're ever going to affect that management gets this, these are the kinds of things you're going to want to show them. Right? Just how easy this is so they can understand this. Show them these kinds of lists and show them these kinds of e-commerce sites. Matter of fact, here's one for you. Here's a list of, this is financial services, but you can find it for healthcare services, you can find it for government. These are sites where if I want to go buy some Bitcoins or PayPal or skim this or whatever it is, all kinds of stuff right at the ready. Anything you want. If you just want IP addresses, go get it. If you just want email addresses, go get it. Whatever you want, just go get it. Right? Show this stuff to your management team. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a second. Data is valuable. Right? The data is valuable. The crimes behind it's valuable. Right? The money you get out of it's valuable. It's just simply valuable. To us, it reminds us of prostitution, or reminds us, it reminds you of prostitution or of drugs. You can take that pusher off the corner on Friday, but it won't be until Monday there'll be a new one there. Why? This is just way too profitable. Right now, this is really too profitable. Now, what we saw is when Target, that breach happened, and how many cards were involved in that breach?
Millions.
About 70 million, depending on how you count them. What we saw then is the average data record went from about $55 a data record down to about $25 a data record. It's a business. The market got flooded with cards. These are businesses. Right? These are businesses. Right? This is big business. On the financial side, I'm just going to point to corporate account takeover as one of these kinds of crimes. Again, there's lots more stuff here than we're going to have time to talk about. But corporate account takeover is a big deal, right? This is where businesses are doing business banking with their bank. And the hacker isn't breaking into the bank. Who are they breaking into? The business. That typically has less security. From there, they install a keystroke logger. The legitimate person at that business goes to do payroll or something like that. The keystrokes go to the hacker. Now the hacker does payroll. They sit there and they watch the batches, they watch the sizes, they watch the frequency. They do their reconnaissance so that when they submit payroll, it's going to look very, very real. That's corporate account takeover. That's a big, big deal. So if you're a small business or a business that's doing corporate banking and your bank is saying use tokens or, hey, change your password or use multi-factor authentication or whatever it is, and you're like, this is inconvenient as heck. Remember, that's why. This is the crime that they're trying to prevent, among other things. We're seeing these cases happen on a weekly basis. We've got a forensics group as well at SBS, and we're seeing these things. We hate these calls. We love calls from customers, but we hate the calls that come in and say, we lost $70,000 in wire fraud or corporate account takeover. We don't know, we had $7,000, $10,000 transactions, and and then we have to get in the middle of that mess. Okay. Corporate account takeover. Right? And essentially anytime you're hooking up with your customers, whether you're a hospital, to check your medical record, or whether you're a government agent, whatever you are, you have these equivalents, right, of corporate account takeover. But that's the specific example in the banking sector. We had an issue on this side of it, just 6 weeks ago, right? We've got a lot of software, risk management software that we've created. We've got about $4 million worth of investment in software solutions for our customers, and about half of that software was being downloaded before we caught it. I mean, heck, we're just a small little company in Madison, South Dakota. So this stuff is really, unfortunately, happening here. And there's lots more links here that you can go out to if you want a copy of this slide deck. So hacking is real. It attacks companies in Madison or Manhattan, right? It doesn't really matter. Right? And you know what? I might not have as much to lose in my business in Madison, South Dakota, but let me tell you what, if they take my software, I'm damn near out of business. Right? What if somebody copies that software? What if some Chinese group copies that software, or whatever it is? Right? Boy, I don't know. We've got, 120 or whatever employees we've got. I mean, those are real people with real jobs and real families. Right? As an employer, we think about these kinds of responsibilities. Very serious stuff. So hacking can be stealing the data. It can be. There's so many motives for it. We don't have time enough to talk about it. Right? Advanced persistent threats. I don't know if anybody's talked about APTs and those kinds of things. I mean, that stuff's about as real as it gets. I had an opportunity to testify to Commerce, 4 or 5 weeks ago, U.S. Commerce Committee. And again, a lot of what we were talking about was APTs and other kinds of things that were going on there against our critical infrastructure. That stuff's about as real as it gets. And for those of you that don't know, at Dakota State, we've got about 20 full tuition scholars, and these are undergraduate students. Can you imagine this? Coming to Dakota State, studying what you want to do, everything's paid for, and they get $20,000 as a stipend. And then they're going to go work for DHS or NSA. And it's all in this APT, this critical infrastructure protection area. At Dakota State, by the way, we've got 3,100 students. 800 of them are now studying cybersecurity. It's our largest program. It's bigger than computer science or anything else. Right? This is a real career choice. Right? We've got a master's in security. We've got a PhD in cyber operations. I mean, this stuff's about as real as it gets. Data leakage, as we know, isn't hacking in. This is somebody from the inside doing something either stupid, accidentally, or on purpose, and stealing stuff out. In my sector, I can just give you examples. In the banking sector, we saw 2 tellers. I don't think I have that here. We saw 2 tellers that were print screening, for example, 8 customer records per day for about 17 months. 2 ladies, just print screening, and you can be like, well, why wasn't that disabled? Why wasn't that turned off? Or why wasn't, I get all that, right? But this is what was going on. They were just going into the core processor, and they were print screening records, putting them in their purse, and walking out. These are 2 tellers. Now let's just talk about this. What's a teller make? $90,000, $100,000 a year? What does a teller make? 10, 12 bucks an hour? Now what's a data record worth, do we say? Even in a depressed economy where Target, right, can't protect their information? No, just kidding. But right, even in a depressed economy, what's 8 customer records worth? $200 at the very, very shallow end, right? Shallow end of the pool, $200, deep end, probably $400 or $500, depending on the price elasticity of what's going on at that time, right? So a teller working all day makes $100. You've got employees just like that you're paying those kind of wages, and that data is just way too attractive. Now, in this example, I think there'd be more of this, but how do you launder that data? Well, in this situation, one of the teller's boyfriends had an ability to do that. Right? So you think about that, a couple $100 a day. Last time I checked, the government doesn't tax. It's kind of tax-free, $200. Okay. So again, sometimes it's malicious. That example that I provided was. And then there's all kinds of things that you can do, like DLPs and all kinds of controls that you can implement to safeguard against yourself. But that's the crime. So sometimes it's just accidental. I mean, this wasn't accidental. Whoops, print screen 8 a day for 17 months. Oh, I didn't know. How did that get into my purse? Right? Not exactly my man purse. Right? Not exactly. Right? But sometimes it is just something, a mistake. Matter of fact, here's a slide for you. How many of you seen this before? Something like this. The question is how many employees would misuse technology? The answer is almost everybody. It's just a matter of how frequently. People just don't view your technology as your technology. They don't view it that way. Employees view that they have a right to Facebook, or they have a right to this stuff, or they have a right to install a USB stick, or whatever it is. They just view that to some degree, right? To varying degrees. We can debate that, we can argue that, but the studies that we do time after time after time come up with in this range. Okay. Social engineering. This might be the number one threat. Right? I didn't really rank these 1 to 5, even though hacking was one. This one here, I didn't know what to do about social engineering. Anybody got an answer to this? Or anybody got an answer to get someone to stop clicking on things they shouldn't, or opening things that they shouldn't? If you do, you should be up here. Because there's absolutely, I mean, there's lots of things that you can do to help, but how I mean, you know, what do you really do? Gosh. So again, social engineering, for those of you that don't know, right, isn't trying to hack in, it's trying to convince somebody to do something that they shouldn't. Right? It's using your persuasive behaviors to get information or get access to things that you just shouldn't have access to. Right? This is back to Kevin Mitnick and all the early work that he did, right, to be able to fool telcos and those kinds of things, to hand out stuff and to get access to stuff that he shouldn't. You know, this stuff is just as real as it gets, right? What do you do about it? There's all kinds of things you can do about it. It doesn't guarantee anything. We do a lot of these kinds of things, phishing tests, right? A lot of companies now do lots of different kinds of phishing tests. We haven't met a bank yet that we haven't been able to, somebody's not clicking on something, right? It's, you know, what do you do about that? We'll drop some USB sticks around, you know, if there's 10 branches, maybe we drop some USB sticks in the parking lot, we'll drop them in the back area, drop them in the front door. You know, see who's plugging stuff into the network that shouldn't be. If we don't like the results, I mean, well, maybe we'll write, you know, payroll file on it next time, and then we'll see, right? We really still don't like the results. Maybe we'll write nude pictures or something like that on there. I know hackers would never play dirty like that. They would never do that, right? So just to kind of see, I mean, who is, right? Back to this slide right here, maybe. Looks like I might be blocked up. Back to this slide right here, misusing computers. How many of you have a policy that you can't bring a USB stick and plug it into your own network? Right? Well, you know what? They don't care. Matter of fact, I mean, about 30% of those USB sticks get plugged in. Then it beacons back, and you know, we just ran reports saying 40% of these sticks got plugged in. Okay, so then there's all kinds of other things. Go through your dumpsters yourself. You don't need me to do that, right? We got a stinky area at SBS with all these garbage bags, right? And it's from going through dumpsters at banks and other places. And I mean, Buzz, have you done some of this stuff, going through dumpsters?
Recently.
Yeah, recently. Yeah, looks like you need a shower there, my friend. But no, you know, I mean, and gosh, you know, it's just, you can go through that. What are you looking for with dumpster diving? Going through dumpsters or going through trash cans? What are you looking for?
Paperwork.
You're looking for paperwork that's not shredded. What else are you looking for? Yeah, media that didn't get properly destroyed. You're looking for those kinds of things. These are not high-tech things. Not everything is a high-tech solution with some certain crazy encryption stuff via some secure pipe to, right, 9 million feet under the, right? Not everything's like that. Some of this stuff is just, you know, I mean, I don't know if we've got any presidents in here, but you know, usually you're the worst violators of the shredding policies, right? You've got the most data, and there's your trash bin, and stuff just, I don't know, it's just like, your desk must be at an angle, and it just kind of all goes into that, right? And so I'm just poking fun at you, but, you know, check all that kind of stuff. There's lots of services that do that. Even at SPS, we use the shredded service and those kinds of things. Okay? But these are real. This stuff, these problems are super real. They're super practical problems. I'll tell you a very quick story. You know, we use students a lot of time at SPS and at Helix to do the dumpster diving for obvious reasons. Right? Yeah, for obvious reasons. And one time, this is about 10 years ago, I came in on a Saturday, I was behind on stuff, came in, and there was Cody Delzer was there. And he had all this stinky garbage, and I'm like, oh, what's going on? And stuff. And he had found, by the way, about a month before that, a cash bag with $800, I think. Yeah, going through a dumpster, found a cash bag with money. We turned it back into the bank, and they're like, oh, good. We said we found a cash bag with some cash in it. They're like, good, we lost a bag that had $5,000 in it. I'm like, Cody, come on. That wasn't the story. The story was Cody was taping together a shredded document to see it was one picture of a check. And I'm like, Cody, that's a little overkill. If they shredded, let's give them credit for it. All right. All kinds of different things that you can do. We know that if we get physical access to your device in an unmonitored way, we'll own your device. We know that if we get access to your wire closet, we'll own your network. We know that, right? That's why these physical impersonations are so darn important, right? And training in your staffs, that if people are there that they don't recognize, right? They need to be badged, credentialed, you know, those kinds of folks. Otherwise, if you get physical access, you're pretty much done on the cyber side. These are just examples of some different phishing toolkits that are out there that you can basically very easily deploy, be able to phish people. There's all this stuff is becoming almost like a software as a service or an infrastructure as a service. I don't think I have it in here. This is SET. I'm just going to let you kind of look at this. This is Dave Kennedy's platform. But even like a denial of service attack, if I want to do a denial of service attack against your financial institution, I actually don't have to do that anymore. But I can go out to the internet and get somebody and hire them, right, to do a denial of service attack against you and just pay them a fee for it. It's all available. I talked a little bit about corporate account takeover, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this is the slide I want burned into your mind. Most small and medium-sized businesses, every survey and study we do or others do, typically about 70% of them, 7 out of 10 small businesses, lack one of the basic security controls. That, like if you had a home network, what would you have? Well, I'd have a firewall, I'd have some antivirus, I'd do some patching. Law firms up and down main streets. Tax firms, flower shops, Joe's Automotive. These are not cybersecurity experts. Okay? That's how corporate account takeover is happening. And most of those folks say, you know what, when there's a $70,000 problem, I don't know how it happened. They may have got in through me or not. I'm a small business, whatever, just put the money back. And if you don't, most folks will leave the bank. It's a big issue. Could your business afford to lose $70,000 like that? If you entrusted the bank with your money and all of a sudden $70,000 was wired out and you didn't know about it, what would you do in that situation? But what if the breach happened through you, not through the bank, and then they keystroke logged you? I mean, what's the bank supposed to do? Come out and take care of your security? So there's a lot of fighting in DC about this particular issue. Oh, I did include this one. I didn't include vendor risk. I'll talk a little bit about this. This ATM issue is a big deal. Typically, it works with a skimmer and a camera. What's the skimmer for? The card number. What's the camera for? The pin. Why do we need the camera? To get the pin, but why? Because the pin, what?
Is not the Streff.
Okay, so you've got to then match that up. You know, if you go to DEF CON or Black Hat, how many of you gone there? Right, and they almost annually have an ATM jackpotting session or something like that. Right, I mean, it's back to, what was that guy's first name?
Barnaby Jack.
Barnaby Jack, and he ended up committing suicide, right? Yep. Yeah, he did. And anyway, he was the first one to get on stage and show people how to jackpot ATMs. You know, he would talk about best practices. Best practices. One of the best practices we have with skimming, right, is to do the reconnaissance to figure out how long you have to keep that skimmer on to get 300 cards. I was like, why 300 cards? Wow, it's the best practice. Could be 15 minutes not 15 minutes. Could be 5 hours in a subway area that gets a lot of money. It could be 5 days in a remote location. How long does it take to install a skimmer? Do you need special tools? Right, these little Allen wrenches. Have you seen those kids? Is that what you need? Here's a video. Go check it out. It takes about 7 seconds. Yeah, you can use stick tape. Right, you can use Velcro. You can there's all kinds of things. All these skimmers are commercially available over the internet. We've got we bought lots of different things to make cards or skimmers and whatever it is. Right, so that we could study it and that kind of thing. And our students love playing with this stuff too. This was one of those ATM scams up and down the streets of Manhattan at, like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. They recruited a bunch of people, those signs that they put in the ground that say, want to earn $80,000? Right? Those are some of the people that went around. And at 3 in the morning, right, you take from 49th to 52nd Street, you take from 53rd to right and go. And $2 million later, they drained a bunch of ATMs. Part of a $40 million cyber heist. For those of you that don't know, an ATM machine is just a computer. It's a specialized computer that does some very specific functions, but if you take off that cover and that shell, it's a computer. It's got a keyboard, it's got USB ports, right? Right? That's all it is. And by the way, they run Windows now. Oh, and by the way, they're on Bank's network. It used to be on standalone networks running these goofy proprietary operating systems. Right? So why has the risk gone up in this area? I've told you 2 reasons. Okay. Here's a couple of the Cal Berkeley DSU. No, these are just guys. Right? They did a little selfie there. Yeah, now they're doing something else. All the folks behind this ring were indicted, charged, and successfully prosecuted. Okay? So here's the deal. What do I want to do here? What am I encouraging you to do? Make sure your executives at Arrows Data Center or wherever you're at, that they're never going to understand everything that you understand, Dennis. They're just never going to do that. Right? But how do you help them understand the basics? How do you help them understand? Keep them navigated on the big issues. That's one of the things that I would say to you. Right? Make sure that they always know what those big issues are. Here's the good news. They should always kind of know what they're going to do about it. Not about any one particular threat. Like ATMs. What do we do about that? But the answer always should be no problem. We've got a layered security program. We've got a risk management practice where we are constantly evaluating the threats and risks to our different environments, like ATMs. We are really good at educating our customers and employees on these threats better than somebody else, better than our competition. And then we have a testing and verification program to make sure that what we think is in there working effectively is indeed in there and working effectively. The banking sector, for those of you that don't know this, are required annually to conduct an IT audit, a penetration test, a vulnerability assessment, social engineering test, among other things. Why am I telling you that? Because I think over time, that's where industries go. That's where folks are going. And we know that, for example, healthcare from HIPAA to HITECH Act, right, that upped kind of what was going on, like risk assessment, right, is now required, and acceptable use policy and some of that kind of stuff is now required there. Is it really required that there's an FDIC that's going to come in, an equivalent in the healthcare side, to really do those audits yet? You know, it might not be as required as the banking sector, but I believe in working with DC and the policymakers, lawmakers there, that over time, that's the direction that we're all going. Okay, and we can debate that, right? I guess that was more opinion than anything else. I think you're going to see that on the government side, especially in our critical infrastructures. I think telcos, I think power, right, are going to be very important infrastructures for us to protect. Because everybody depends on telecommunications and power. True? I mean, what would you do if we didn't have power here in South Dakota for a week in December? Right, let's put your business aside, like we've got real other issues as well. But let's talk about your business. I mean, how would you keep it running? Right, so we can talk about banking or healthcare or whatever, or oil and gas being critical and need to get protected. And we should. And we are talking, a lot of folks are talking about that in DC. That's what DHS, U.S. Cyber Command, that's what they do. By the way, did you know that there's something called U.S. Cyber Command? How many of you know that? What's U.S. Cyber Command? So there's Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, and U.S. Cyber. There are 6,000 cyber warriors in U.S. Cyber Command. Started in 2013, and over the last 2 years, 6,000 cyber warriors. So for example, if Google is getting hacked by China, or whatever it is, they'll work with DHS, Google will, and say, and as long as they can attribute, right, do attribution, right, then they'll get a hold of U.S. Cyber Command, and U.S. Cyber Command can offensively fight back, right? You can't. Somebody starts attacking you, you can't start attacking back, can you? Well, U.S. Cyber Command can't. Okay? So this gets to this whole area of advanced persistent threats, CIP, infrastructure protection, and I think power and telecommunications are at the top of that list. But here's what you want. You want to make sure that your management team understands at a basic level, you know, what's going on, what they should be concerned about. And hey, no problem. We've got a security program. We are good at assessing our risk. We are good at teaching our customers and our employees what to do. You know, and then we've got a testing and verification program. Whether the government requires this yet or not, I look at IT audits and pen tests and those kinds of basic auditing functions to verify and test that you're ready to go. Here's an analogy that I use. Let's say that you guys, everybody was taking my management, my master's class in risk management. Which, Nick, was that a great class or was that a great class?
Phenomenal class.
Yeah, phenomenal. That just number. Offered online anytime. No. But let's say that I said to you, you know what, you're not going to be graded. We're going to get together 32 times. You can even watch the videos. And I just want you to learn. Hey, what would your effort be to that? Now let's say that we're going to do this. There's going to be 6 quizzes. There's going to be 5 papers you need to write. There's going to be 2 exams, including a comprehensive final. What would your effort be like? What would your readiness level be like? That's the whole power of auditing. The whole power is that somebody's going to come in and evaluate and check. Right? So there's just an inherent power in that function. Okay? Just think about that, all right? And, you know, people ask, well, what's the first kind of auditing thing should I do? Look at pen tests and some of those network assessment kinds of things. Look at that. The IT audit can deal with sort of that policy review. Do you have an acceptable use policy? Have you classified your data? Some of those basic kinds of things as well. Test and verify your layered security program. And there's lots of other folks in town that do that work as well. So let's go through these very quickly, one at a time. What's a layered security program look like? I'm going to show you what we do at a bank. What does good risk assessment look like? I'm going to very quickly show you that. What are some options with awareness? And then I'm going to very quickly talk about auditing. So let's talk about those one at a time. How many of you are familiar with the ISO security standard? 27001, 27002. That's a security standard. That's a security program. Implement that. How many are familiar with COVID? Implement that. There's that. That's a framework, right? NIST on the government side, right? Those of you that work in the different agencies and government side, right? You've got the NIST framework with all the different FIPS and all the different NIST documents and all that kind of stuff. They've got frameworks for it, right? This is another framework that we've created that is more for small and medium-sized banks. It's charged with risk assessment, ends with auditing, and it has all kinds of squishy goodies in between, right? Like asset management. What security standard does that come up? COVID? ISO? Which one is big in asset management? One of the domains is asset management.
Probably COVID because it's business driven.
Okay. It certainly has, they're in their 19 areas, elements of inventory, right? And the ISO standard says if you can't track your assets, you can't secure them. If you don't know where they're at, you stand no chance to secure them. And if you're going to give them to a church and not cleanse them off, you stand, whatever. Let's not even try. So you got to get good at this inventorying and tracking of assets. Boy, that's fun, isn't it? Whew, let's come in on Sunday and do that. Be better. I'd rather do, if I was an Eagles fan, I'd rather do that than watch the Eagles based on Anybody Eagles fan?
No.
Okay, God bless you. All right, so I'm a Vikings fan, so I know there's a lot of Packers, and I'm a Bears fan right now. That would hurt. That would hurt a little bit, but I got nothing to brag about. No trophies, nothing. They're just a bunch of nothing being a Vikings fan. Vendor management. We know that every one of you are relying on service providers and vendors. Right? You take a look at a bank, they don't write software. They don't create hardware. Everything that they use is a vendor product. Matter of fact, most of the time, the vendor's hosting it for the bank. Right? So the risk is at the vendor. And it ain't going to work that if you've got a bank and my data is stolen, I ain't going to that vendor saying, geez, Pfizer, or Jack Henry, or what the heck happened? I'm going right to right? So we know that reputation risk and all that kind of stuff, we've got to have a way to manage those vendors. In the healthcare area, it's called business associates, right? And you need to have your business associate agreements, right? You need to review those annually and all that kind of stuff. Different terminology, right? But it's the same kind of thing. That's why. This is one of the most critical things we got going on. Okay. I talked about penetration testing. I talked about vulnerability assessments. For those of you that don't know the difference, there's huge differences. It's apples and oranges. They're both fruit, I guess. Apples and oranges are fruit. Got that right. I'm hot today. But pen testing is where you hire a professional, right, to take a look at the kind of the perimeter of your network and defeat that perimeter like a hacker would. Right? And then there's usually social engineering techniques in there as well now, okay? Right? But the vulnerability assessment isn't that. It's somebody's invited into your organization and they're scanning pretty much everything on your network or however you scope it, looking for known vulnerabilities, default settings, and all kinds of things. We are talking about, because I get this question all the time, well, aren't those the same or which one should I do? I don't know. No, they're not the same, and which should you do? I try to get a good price on getting those things packaged together is what I would do. Security awareness. I'm going to talk more about this. Business continuity, figuring out the redundancy that you need. Remember, part of security is the C, which is what? Confidentiality, the I, which is integrity, and the A, which is business continuity says, we got to keep our systems available. That is security. A lot of times we think of security just being keeping stuff confidential and private. We really think that some of the next big attacks aren't going to be people stealing the data and selling it. Right? And it ain't going to be keeping systems unavailable, although that's what APT and CIP is all about. But what about integrity-based attacks? What about we don't steal the data, we just mess with the data in a heuristic way, and then it gets processed, then it gets pushed to the insurance carrier, who pushes it to the government, who pushes it, and then 6 days later we figure out there was a problem, and you try to get that genie back in the bottle. Integrity-based attacks, we think, are going to be a big deal. Again, that's why business continuity plans for the A and the I are going to be so important as the maturity of these attacks occur. You can say, well, why would somebody do that? There's no money to be made there. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of hacks that have nothing to do with money, right? Ask the anonymous group, or ask, lots of different folks. It's not just about stealing the data. We think it's going to mature into integrity-based attacks. Okay? Incident response. Part of your program. Identify in your organization the incidents you think could occur. What's an example of an incident that should likely be in your incident response plan? What would you do if you got a DDoS attack? What would you do if you had ransomware, or you had an extortion letter saying $25,000 or I'll take your network down? You want your IT person just kind of figuring that out? Or you want to think about that in advance and plan and practice how you would handle those situations. So that's what incident response gets you. Okay? And then finally, your testing function. Remember, an ISP, right, that's what we're talking about, back to this, right? We're talking about ISP. And again, if you wanted to list out the ISO standard, you have their different domains. That's a way to organize yourself. That's a great standard. Nothing wrong with that. And there's other standards. COVID I mentioned, and other standards. This is just kind of a basic security program from our perspective. Remember, it automatically produces documentation. Right? It's got a heartbeat. Your ISP has a heartbeat. Ba-boom. 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 You go to work, you assess risk. Boom. Ba-boom. You're tracking your assets. Boom. Somebody effectively broke into your network. You see the report. You fix it. Boom. Boom. Right? I mean, security is every day. Okay? And then it's not just the IT person. This is meant to reflect that you've got, at a bank, you've got your board of directors involved, you've got an IT committee, an audit committee, a compliance committee, whatever it is, that you've got more than just Jeff the IT guy involved anymore, right? Okay. There has been a big focus on preventative controls. The reality is we can't keep the bad guy out. We can't. Let me tell you a very quick story. Let me go left here for a second. We run at DSU an annual hacking competition. It's called CCDC, Cyber Collegiate Defense Competition, or something like that. Were you guys ever on that team? Was that before your time? Yeah. And anyway, so we'll invite, there'll be, 10 universities or colleges that come from the region, come up to Madison, and we'll have the Iowa State team, the UNL team, the Montana team, or, whatever it is. So you'll have 6 folks on the team, and you'll handle email security, Linux, Windows, web, whatever. You'll divide and conquer. Right? And then SPS and others will have 6, and you're a defense team, by the way. The collegiate folks are defenders. They're not attackers. Right? The attackers are made up of SPS and some other companies that do pen tests and those kinds of things. So there's 6 offensive folks, and then there's 10, 12, 9, depending on the year, teams. And in the middle of every table is a big red siren. Guess what that big red siren is for? Yeah. So we'll give you an hour head start, and then we'll come after you. Last year I walked in there and we had 9 teams or whatever it was. 8 of the 9 sirens were going off. I mean, the reality is you got teams of folks to protect your networks, and we know that it's just a matter of time before something bad happens. We know it. right? And so much of the time and attention has been on preventative controls necessarily, right? But sometimes it's at the expense of these detection and response things. So think about that. Think about what are those detective and response controls that you want to implement. Right? Not just preventative controls. You certainly need the preventative controls. This is a picture of this ISP, and the only thing I'm going to talk, it's the same stuff. The only thing I want to try to do is show that these arrows mean that all these programs work together. How do you figure out what security awareness materials to talk to your staff? I don't know, did the risk assessment talk about what threats are the most concerning? If you hire me to try to break into your organization, shouldn't that invoke the incident response plan? Right? The point here is that this is an integrated plan. And then you can start to make decisions on it. You can measure yourself against it. This is an example, right, where this is the first time if we've got a president or an executive in the room that doesn't understand zeros and ones, right? They understand this kind of stuff. So if I walk into your financial institution and I say, I'm the physical security officer, we need to do more with physical security at this bank. Would you agree with me if you were the executive? You got one more security dollar to spend, you're going to spend, we got to do more with physical security. Our physical security, we got to do more. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
So physical security is green. Look at this stuff. If we have one more security dollar to spend, it looks to me like emergency preparedness, third-party management, risk assessment is where we should be spending our dollars. How many of you have a management program, like I've talked about, and then you can measure yourself against it so you can align your investments? So that's what I want you to think about. I want you to think about that, a management system. The ISO standard calls it an ISMS, right? Prior to implementing all those controls, you need to have an ISMS. Right? They're saying if you don't have a management system, you can go in and implement the right controls, but it's going to get out of date and it's not going to remain managed. So they say before you do that, put in your management system. This is an example of a management system. And then you can run all kinds of reports to try to figure out where the problems are. So again, you can measure risk, you can mitigate risk, you can align your investments. Again, we're not going to go through that, don't worry, but these are the kinds of things that you need to be able to start producing to your executives so you can figure out where your risk is. I'm going to keep going here. Because I want to leave a little bit of time at the end here for questions. My last concept that I think I want to talk to you about before on that is about a maturity model. Teach your organization to mature itself in the security area. The sky is not falling, and we've got to do everything by the end of the year. That's the wrong approach. The right approach is to teach folks, and then to mature your organization. This is the capability maturity model that has 5 levels. The first time you do something, you're terrible, and then you do it over time, you become very, very good at something. How many of you like to play Xbox or PlayStation? Right? So if a new game comes out, like what's a car racing game? Is it Forza? Or, is that right? Yeah, like or COD or something like that. Like the first time that comes out, right? You're not very good. I can remember I got a son who's a senior, and I'll tell you a very quick story. I'm a first generation gamer. Right? I grew up on Atari. Anybody else grew up on Atari? Man, you want to talk about complicated? You PlayStation, Xbox, people don't know crap. Right? You would take this pixel and we would pass it back and forth and not try to let it get by us. What was the name of that game? Pong. Oh my God. You know what they ended up doing? They ended up taking that same concept, putting it in a tank, and you could bend the bullet. Oh my God. That was like, I think I skipped my sophomore year. I mean, that was unbelievable. You want to talk to you could literally press a button and bend that pixel. It was an amazing thing. So my son goes to me, because I've always talked to him, I'm a first generation gamer, And so he goes, Dad, how come you never played Xbox with me? Like, you're right. Yes, throw me that joystick. And have you, I know you younger folks, are like, well, I'm probably dating myself like an old fart now. I'm not that old, right? But have you, in my generation or beyond, seen one of those things? There's a whole system to be able to control the gun, like in COD, right? And then there's a whole system to be able to control the player, and you got to synchronize the gun and the player, right? And then there's something ducking, throwing bombs, and just all this stuff. And I was trying to figure it out, and I couldn't. I said, okay, let's just play. So there's a mode, I guess it's called, where you can play one-on-one. And so my son just killed me with a machine gun, then he killed me with a pistol, and he just started to come up with a knife at me, and I said, screw this. Because I was just shooting clouds. And that's where many organizations are at on the security side. The first time you do something, you're shooting clouds. And what you want to try to do is teach folks, and there's no emergency, you don't have to go be the grand champion of COD by the end of the year. Well, that'd be great. We'll have street credit with my son. Right? But what I just need to do is be able to move from a level 1 to a level 2. Just mature a little bit. Right? And install those kinds of principles. And then move to a standardized process. And then move to being able to measure myself. And then move to self be able to set goals on those measurements and take action based on hitting or not hitting. And just mature yourself over time. Don't try to scare your executives. That's a bad approach. Right? Try to teach them and mature them. Okay? Last thing before auditing, I'm running out of time between you and lunch, and I'm not going to be late, is security awareness. These are examples of things you can do for your employees. Remember I think you've got 3 audiences for security awareness. 1 is your employees, 2 is your customers, and I think 3 is your community. If you know something about security, try to figure out how you reach back into your schools, into with the elderly at different places where they're trying to get connected, so that they don't get scammed. Think about awareness on the community side, but I'm not going to talk too much about that. But these are the kinds of things that you can do for your employees. Hang up posters. You can download free security awareness posters. Put them in your break room, they look up, next thing you know, you're just reminding them of security. This doesn't solve world hunger, I get it. Right? But now, what poster should you download? Well, that's right, my risk assessment is going to tell me what I'm concerned about. If it's shredding, then get a shredding poster. If it's fishing, get a fishing poster. You see the concept? Okay? So there's all kinds of posters that are out there. Think about how many of you have a customer appreciation day? Okay? Some of you do. If you have customer appreciation days where you're serving hot dogs and beans or whatever, right? Maybe do a little something on identity theft or on safe computing or hand them a flyer. There's all kinds of stuff at Identity Theft Resource Center and other online sources where you don't have to create this stuff, right? That this stuff is available to you. Play games. How many of you pull folks into the conference room once a year and talk fishing and stuff? Sorry. That's my wife's a physical therapist. Her favorite day of the year is to do the HIPAA training stuff. God, she just gets up and I'm like, why are you up so early, honey? So, break into teams. At banks, we say tellers against loan officers. Top 5 answers are on the board. The top threat to this bank is, right, and we start to play games. Okay? InfraGard, how many are familiar with InfraGard? Okay, great. They've got an awareness program. We'll check that out. We've got a certification program to get folks certified in basic security stuff. Your customers, what can you do there? They can see the posters too. It doesn't just have to be in your break room. And then we're doing lunch and learns where your customers are pulling them together and you're talking about safe computing practices. What's the padlock? What's the HTTPS? You're talking to them about it, right? You're just trying to raise the level just a little bit. Oh, I did talk about community awareness. Remember, based on the audience, you're going to talk about a different message. With the kids in grade school, right, we're going to talk to them about cyberbullying, and we're going to talk to them about safe computing and stalking and all that kind of stuff. The kids that go to colleges, right? Now they've got bank accounts. They're going to the clinic, right? And they're going to check their medical record, and you're going to talk to them about, for the first time, kind of safe practices in those kinds of environments. And again, the elderly, we know how targeted they are. Can you believe that folks are still falling for the Nigerian scam? If they wouldn't be falling for it, then these folks in these Nigerian cyber cafes would stop doing it. Right? But the reality is we know that, and you don't have to be an expert on how to mitigate really technical risks. Right? You just have to talk to the elderly about that and raise their level of awareness. You didn't win the lottery. You aren't that lucky. If you send $5,000, you're not going to get $5 billion back. Right? You just got to help educate these folks. We can do more this way. And then finally, the testing and verification process. Our audits, our pen tests, our vendor reviews, etc. At a bank, there's typically about a dozen of these that they need to do. If you're not testing and verifying, I had I worked for the Hartford and ran IT for the Hartford and the Life Division up in Minneapolis for a number of years. And I had the head of the Hartford Life said, if you're not keeping score, you're just practicing. If you're not keeping score, you're just practicing. Auditing is the way you keep score. It tests and verifies where you're at and measures you against where you used to be at. Right? If you're not keeping score, you're just practicing. Are you just practicing with security, or are you keeping score? Okay? So, in summary, right, we want to layer together things, right? We know that we want rock solid chain link, right? We want right, those big links that tie down those big boats that you can't even lift, right? Not these kinds of links, right? You're in the fight. I mean, this stuff is not going away. Have you really asked yourself, how good are you at security? In taking a look at your competitors, are you better at security than your competitors? Or maybe that's not important. If it is important, how are you building that as a core competency in your organization? Because I tell you right now, most executives think they're fine. Ain't we got that fire thing that blocks everything? Don't we run that? Don't we run some wall or whatever? Did we? Don't we? I wrote a check for that. And the reality is that's why you want to layer these things, right? Because we know things get through firewalls, right? At the network level. So you need to have application firewalls. And then we know things get through that. So we know that, right? We know that in this room, right? But nobody should have that false sense of security. Woo. Questions? Sir?
Kevin, where do you get your daily news for information security?
Yeah, couple places. InfraGard has a website, right? Some of you are familiar with that, right? That's got good stuff. We are members of the ISACs. How many of you have heard of the ISACs or are members of the ISACs? So, you get stuff there. DHS has stuff that you can pull and push. The issue isn't can I get the data? It's can I get the right data? I mean, do I really care that an Apache server in Turkey was compromised 20 minutes ago? And some of those filters like through the ISACs. But yeah, that's typically where we get that kind of information. And there's other outlets, but those are good threat level areas. Other questions? Please.
Your point about social engineering, if you read the news, pretty much every hack in the last major hack in the last 5 years that made the news started with somebody opening something they shouldn't, and worse yet, for people with elevated privileges that should have known better.
Yep.
So if people have feet of clay, I don't know how to solve the problem of people being part of this. I don't know the problem.
I don't either, quite frankly. You know, it's like, well, you weren't supposed to say that. You know, I don't know either, Ed. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You know, I think sometimes we get so bent on advanced techniques that we miss basic hygiene.
Amen to that. Yeah.
You know, I think we do. You know, we just miss basic hygiene. You know, and you know, we won't take people out of what they do. If they're a teller, we won't take them off the line. If they're a nurse, we won't take them out of that. If they're on the factory line, we won't take them out. Right? So then we come up with online training systems. Like, that's what my wife now does with the HIPAA stuff. She kind of starts the video and then she goes and comes back and says that she did it. And now, you know, right, that's what people are doing. You know, so that's just lacking basic hygiene. Please.
So with that, do you believe in having a list of policies and procedures and quizzing those people who have the potential of touching a computer?
I think so, within reason, right? I mean, policy is absolutely necessary, right? You know, I don't talk about policy from a legal perspective. I'm sure we have attorneys in here. They can talk about it from that. So I'm not going to do that. I am going to talk about it from a security perspective. You want to have this right balance of policies, and boy, that's hard, right? Like, you don't want to create policy for everything, but you need to have policy. And where is that tipping point? You know, and do you need to quiz them on it? You need to educate them on it as part of your annual security awareness training or whatever you're doing. Make sure that they're seeing those policies, especially the acceptable use policy, right? If you have an acceptable use policy, right, make sure that they see it. Some folks sign that annually. How many of you sign it annually? I mean, I don't know. You do what you want to do there, right? But make sure, to me, this isn't a CYA thing. Again, that's no offense to attorneys, right? They might have a little bit more of that protectionist thing. I just want to educate folks on what we want done at this organization. And the acceptable use policy should document that. You know, can I go check Facebook? Can I download stuff? What can I do? I don't know. What's the acceptable use policy say? And you're like, well, you know what? We got technology that handles all that, right? The technology should enforce the policy. Okay. Well, how about one more question? Don't we have lunch coming up here? Okay. How about one more question? There's a ticket on the line, so make it a good one. Are those beer tickets or are they?
No, I didn't think that.
Otherwise, I'd ask a question.
So what do you think of admin rights on computers?
What about it? I mean, we have to have, you know, accounts that are beyond standard privileges, right? We have to.
Lock them up, never use them.
What's that?
Lock them up, never use them.
Yeah, you know, I used to run, as I mentioned, at Hartford, I ran a group, a Linux group, and I can remember Will and Nancy used to share an admin account, and we were way beyond those kinds of things, but those power accounts, obviously those need to be controlled very tightly. But yet, you know, somebody in the organization is going to need administrative authority. So there's no good answer to that. I know I didn't answer your question. Right, but you need to have good oversight into those accounts. You need to have good monitoring of that. You need to watch those folks. I can remember the first time I said to Will, you know, hey, we're going to watch this. He's like, oh, geez, don't you trust me? You know, you need to verify. You got to trust but verify. And that's a good security principle as illustrated in your question. Right, with those power accounts, you need to trust but verify. And if I'm an admin, how many of you are admin in here? Right? You should want to be monitored. You should want, really, I know you're like, oh, yeah, right. But I mean, because the reality is you're doing nothing wrong. And the reality is that you want everything that you're touched to be logged, and the stuff that you're not, you don't want, right? So you can demonstrate that as well. But power accounts like that will remain problematic. Final thoughts? Well, I appreciate from the EarthBend folks, I appreciate the invitation to come here today. Appreciate it.